I just got out of prison. To see my husband, Nathan. He has taken over the company and has become a wealthy CEO. He handed me a coat. His tone was much gentler than usual. He said calmly, "You have completed your sentence. Go and apologize to Sophia properly. There is still a place for you in this family." This gentle attitude is completely different from 3 years ago when he wouldn't listen to my explanations. His indifference when he sent me to prison for his beloved is entirely different. I didn't take the coat. He said coldly, "I'm not going back. Let's get a divorce." Nathan listened to my words. He scoffed coldly, suddenly threw the coat in my face. He said with disdain, "Stop putting on an act here. You've been in prison for 3 years. What's the difference now from being a worthless person? Except for me, who else would accept you?" His words were like a sharp knife. It pierced deep into my heart. So that's how it is. The gentle feelings from earlier were just my misunderstanding. Sophia pushed open the car door and walked over to Nathan. She looked at me coldly and said, "Emma, 3 years ago, you were jealous of how Nathan treated me, and you hurt me. I have already forgiven you. Why do you have to pretend here?" Her words suddenly reminded me of the events from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, Sophia was indeed injured, but it wasn't me who did it. She set me up on purpose. That day was Nathan and my wedding anniversary. We had planned to have a romantic candlelight dinner at a restaurant. I waited with anticipation for a full 3 hours, but he never showed up. I couldn't reach him by phone either. I was anxious inside, worried that something happened to him. I quickly ran back home as soon as I opened the door, but I saw Sophia standing there. She is Nathan's ex-girlfriend. Since she returned to the country, they have been in regular contact. Because of this, I have argued with Nathan many times. I asked her why she was at my house. She looked provocative. She said she had drunk too much with friends. When Nathan found out, he immediately picked her up from the bar and let her rest at home. He went out to buy hangover medicine. I was both angry and anxious. I told her to stay away from Nathan in the future. Not only did she not listen, she suddenly pulled out a knife and stabbed it directly at me. I instinctively fought back. It took a lot of effort to snatch the knife away, but my arm was still tightly grabbed by her. Taking advantage of my distraction, she pulled my hand and suddenly stabbed herself in the shoulder. Blood immediately soaked her clothes red. I stood there in shock. I completely don't understand why she did that. Nathan is back. He is holding a bag of medicine. As soon as he walked in, he saw the situation in the room. He immediately shouted. He hurried over to support the injured Sophia. Then he angrily yelled at me, "Emma, what did you do to her?" I was about to explain, but Sophia spoke first. She covered her wound. With a pained expression, she cried out. As soon as Emma walked in and saw me here, she suddenly got angry. She even warned me not to go near you again. I only said a couple of words. She suddenly lost control. She pulled out a knife and lunged at me. Fortunately, I reacted quickly. I only got a scratch on my shoulder. I shook my head vigorously. I loudly explained, "It's not like that. These were all arranged by Sophia. She intentionally hurt herself with the knife." Before I could finish speaking, Nathan coldly interrupted, "Emma, don't lie to me anymore. I'm not stupid. Who would intentionally hurt themselves with a knife? You are clearly jealous of how well I treat her. I did something foolish in a moment of impulse. The evidence is already clear. What are you still trying to argue about?" He was supporting Sophia, while looking at me with eyes full of anger and disappointment. That day, he wouldn't listen to my explanations or pleas. He called the police directly and acted as a witness. I couldn't defend myself in the end. I was sentenced to prison. I served 3 years in jail. After being released, he told me, "Emma, I thought you would seriously reflect on your mistakes in those 3 years and work hard to correct them, but I didn't expect you to still be like this. You show no signs of repentance at all." Nathan's cold voice pulled me back to reality. I looked up. Sophia is affectionately linking her arm with Nathan's. Her gaze towards me is filled with obvious disgust and disdain. I'm not as prone to anger as I used to be. This 3-year prison life has changed me completely. This is who I am now. All that remains in my heart is numbness. I said calmly, "I plan to pack my things and leave." But when I pushed open the door to the room that used to be mine, I was stunned for a moment. I walked into the room, only to find that my clothes and belongings were gone. The entire room was filled with Sophia's things. It seemed like she was the owner of this home. I suddenly remembered something. I hurried to the cabinet to check. The photo of me and my parents that used to be there is missing. That was the last thing my parents left me while they were alive. Now, The cabinet is stuffed with Sophia's things. I can't find my photo anymore. I yelled at them. Where has the photo of me and my parents gone? Where did you put it? Nathan looked at me like this. He frowned slightly. He seemed a bit impatient. Why are you being so calculative? It's just a photo, right? Just take a careful look for it later. Who are you showing that face to as soon as you come back? I clenched my fists tightly. Nathan couldn't possibly not understand how important that photo is to me. But now he completely doesn't care. Even took another woman home while I was away. Sophia walked up to me. She pretended to speak. Emma, I'm really sorry. A few years ago, I had a stomach illness. Nathan saw me alone in the country, no family and no friends, so he let me move in first, but I have too many things. I accidentally made a mess here, but since you are back, I'll move out immediately. She seemed very wronged when she spoke, but my eyes are filled with pride and provocation. As soon as Nathan heard this, he immediately became anxious. Sophia, your health has never been good. It's been hard to see any improvement over the last few years. No one is taking care of you. I really can't help but worry. There's an empty guest room at home. Let Emma stay there. You can just relax and stay with me. When Nathan said this, he didn't even look at me once. He didn't ask for my opinion at all. I felt a wave of bitterness in my heart. Ever since Sophia returned, everything has changed compared to before. Nathan prioritizes her in almost everything. He completely ignores the fact that I am her legal husband. I don't want to get entangled with them anymore, and I don't want to stay here any longer. I just want to quickly find that photo, and then leave this place. Unfortunately, I searched the entire room, but still couldn't find that photo. I still want to keep searching. Nathan suddenly grabbed me. He frowned, and said with some dissatisfaction, "It's getting late. Sophia can't stay up late. You should hurry up and go out. The guest room is empty. You can tidy it up and move in yourself." Hearing him say that, clearly he didn't take my earlier words about leaving to heart. Perhaps he thinks I can't live without him at all. What I said earlier was just out of anger. I quietly pulled my hand back, but I felt a wave of oppression in my heart. The current Nathan doesn't even realize it himself. He keeps mentioning Sophia. I have completely lost my place in his heart. I didn't say anything, silently carrying the simple luggage I brought from prison. Without a word, I walked towards the room he prepared for me. I plan to leave after I find the photo. I was 10 years old. My parents died in a house fire. That photo is the only memento they left me. I must find it. This so-called guest room, there's nothing but a bed. Nothing else. It's more like a storage room. It's filled with all sorts of messy things. My belongings have also been tossed here carelessly. Clearly, it hasn't been organized for a long time. I smiled helplessly. I lay down on the bed. Before I knew it, I fell asleep. I don't know how long I slept. In the middle of the night, I was awakened by a strange noise. I opened the door. I found that the sound was coming from Sophia's room. I tiptoed over. The door was half open. Through the crack of the door, I saw Nathan and Sophia embracing each other, although I had long suspected their relationship. Seeing this scene with my own eyes still shocked me greatly. I stood there, clenching my fists tightly. I felt the blood rush to my head. My mind is completely blank. Sophia is sitting on Nathan. The voice sounds particularly indulgent. "Nathan, Emma is back now. Can we still be like this in the future? Don't worry. She's of no use. She can't compare to you at all. Thanks to you for being with me all these years. I can't live without you now." Nathan finished speaking. The two kissed each other. I can't listen to this anymore. I turned around in a panic and ran away. I returned to the room, my hands pressed tightly against my chest, trying to ease the relentless pain. I thought 5 years in prison had already numbed my emotions, but why does my heart still hurt so much now? Nathan is my first love. He is also the only man I've ever loved in my life. In the past, we had many wonderful days together. Back then, he only had me in his heart. I was very busy with my startup. I've lost a lot of weight from exhaustion. He feels particularly heartbroken. Every day, he spends a lot of time making soup for me. He wants me to replenish my nutrition. Back then, I firmly believed we would continue to be happy together, but I didn't expect. His first love, Sophia, returned to the country. Our lives completely changed. Sophia suddenly barged in, like a stone blocking the way, stuck between us. She could be seen everywhere, no matter what happened, as long as it involved Sophia. Nathan would always unhesitatingly put me down. In the past, we often argued because of Sophia, but he always explained that he did it because Sophia had helped him a lot before. He was just repaying her kindness. Now, The truth is out. It completely shattered me. The sounds of their entanglement continued. I pressed my hands tightly over my ears. But those annoying sounds seeped in everywhere. This torment lasted for more than 2 full hours. Only then did it finally quiet down. I was in a daze. I stared blankly out the window. I don't know how long it had been. Suddenly, a knock on the door broke the silence. I mechanically stood up to open the door. I never expected. It was actually Sophia standing at the door. She saw my lost expression. A triumphant smile appeared on her face. "Emma, you saw everything that just happened between Nathan and me in bed, didn't you?" I clenched my fists tightly. I suppressed the anger inside me. I questioned her. "Sophia, you became the third party. You broke up someone else's family. How can you be so brazen about it?" She let out a cold laugh. With a sarcastic tone, she said, "This is what gives me a sense of achievement. This is what gives me a sense of accomplishment. You have no idea how obedient Nathan is in bed. I tell him what to do, and he does it. You definitely haven't experienced it, have you?" My eyes suddenly turned red. I couldn't hold back any longer. I raised my hand and slapped her face. She nimbly dodged to the side. She still wore that unpleasant smile on her face. "Don't be in a hurry. I just found this in the room. This is the photo you wanted, right?" She took a photo out of her pocket. It was the family portrait I had been searching for a long time. I widened my eyes in surprise. I immediately reached out to grab it. "That's mine. Give it back to me quickly." She quickly tucked the photo away. The smug look on her face became even more apparent. "If you want this photo, you'll need to change your attitude. You'd better kneel down and beg me. I might consider giving the photo back to you." My eyes turned red. I stared at her intently. I shouted angrily, "Sophia, don't go too far." She looked at me. Her eyes were filled with obvious pride and provocation. "I just wanted to see you beg like a dog, pathetically pleading with me. Let me emphasize this again. If you don't do as I say, this photo, you can forget about getting it." As she said this, she pretended to tear the photo. I laughed out of anger. After all, I have nothing to lose right now. At worst, we'll both go down together. You think you can make me kneel and beg, dream on. After saying that, I raised my hand again. This time she didn't dodge. She took a solid slap from me. It hurt so much that she curled up on the ground. I was still not satisfied. I lifted my foot, ready to kick again. Suddenly, a furious shout rang out. "Don't make a move. Emma, what are you trying to do this time?" I looked up. Nathan was walking towards me quickly. He saw Sophia in pain. It broke his heart. He walked a few steps towards me. He slapped me hard across the face. He pointed at me and scolded loudly. "Emma, let me make it clear to you. If I could put you in jail once, I can certainly put you back in again. If Sophia hadn't spoken up for you back then, do you think you would have been out in 3 years? If I had known it would be like this, I should have kept you in jail forever, so you wouldn't cause trouble for others when you got out." Every word felt like a knife to the heart. I was extremely angry. I shouted loudly, "It's Sophia. She used that photo to threaten me, forcing me to kneel and beg her. Otherwise, she'd tear the photo apart. Why should my dignity be trampled like this by you all?" After hearing my words, Nathan was momentarily taken aback. He hadn't said anything yet. I hurriedly ran up to Sophia and reached for the photo in her pocket. I quickly opened her coat. I finally found my photo. I didn't expect that when the photo fell out. It also brought out a piece of paper. Sophia saw that piece of paper. Her face instantly turned pale. She hurriedly reached out to snatch it back. When I saw it, I squinted my eyes. I acted quickly. I grabbed that piece of paper too. I opened it and took a look. I was taken aback. It turned out to be a perfume formula sheet, and the company Nathan and I founded. Its main product is perfume. At that moment, Nathan walked to my side. He saw the content on the note. His expression suddenly changed. He carefully read that piece of paper. Then he angrily asked Sophia, "This is the secret formula for the company's new perfume. How did it end up in your hands? Where did you get it from?" Sophia lowered her head. She completely dared not look at him. Suddenly, she nervously pointed at me. She shouted loudly. It was her. It was Emma. She secretly stuffed something into my pocket during the chaos. After hearing her words, I let out a cold laugh. "Sophia, you should at least find a plausible excuse. I just got out of prison. How could I possibly have that formula?" Nathan, upon hearing this, could no longer contain his anger. He shouted loudly at Sophia on the ground. "She is right, and I never told her this core secret formula. She definitely couldn't get it, Sophia. If you don't tell the truth, I'm calling the police." Upon hearing about calling the police, Sophia's face suddenly turned pale. Under Nathan's persistent questioning, she finally revealed the truth. The list was indeed stolen by her. The purpose was to sell it to the competitor. As long as she handed over the formula to them, she could get $5 million. Nathan listened. He looked sad and disappointed. He said to Sophia, "For $5 million, you sold me out like this. You deserve my feelings for you." Sophia suddenly smiled. Her expression was somewhat twisted. "Feelings? Nathan, we're just using each other. You enjoy the physical pleasure I give you, and I only care about the money in your hands. I tried to get close to you. I invested a lot of time and energy, but you won't even give me a share in the company. You only give me a small amount of money each month. Is this just a dismissive gesture towards me?" Upon hearing this, Nathan's expression immediately changed to one of displeasure. His face instantly became very grim. I seized the opportunity, stepped forward, coldly questioned Sophia. "You deliberately framed me 3 years ago. Was it to send me to prison, so you could have the chance to swallow our assets? So what if it is? I didn't expect your husband to be so easily fooled. It's just a simple ploy to gain sympathy." He actually believed it. Upon hearing this, Nathan shivered. He almost lost his balance. He quickly walked up to Sophia. He slapped her hard several times. At the same time, he angrily scolded her. By this time, Sophia had no strength left to resist. After hitting her, Nathan's face was filled with pain and regret. He turned to me and said, "Emma, I really don't know. It was her who deceived me. It's all her fault. Can you forgive me?" Before he could finish his sentence, I coldly interrupted him. "Nathan, if an apology could solve the problem, then what do we need the police for? You have no idea how I managed to get through these 3 years in prison." After saying that, I took off my shirt, revealing the bruises all over my body. Nathan's eyes widened in shock. He exclaimed in surprise, "Emma, how did you get those injuries?" I stared at him coldly. "Wasn't this your arrangement? I was locked up with those death row inmates. Every day I was bullied and beaten by them. There was no way to fight back. That's why I ended up with these scars." Nathan shook his head vigorously. Teardrops flowed uncontrollably. "Emma, I really didn't know about this." He suddenly looked at Sophia lying on the ground. He kicked her angrily. He asked furiously, "Did you do this?" Sophia stared at me. Her eyes were filled with anger. "Yes, these were all done by me. I even bribed the prison guard. I originally planned to have her meet with an accident in prison. That would have been the ideal scenario." Nathan listened. He screamed. He scolded Sophia again, then he immediately picked up his phone to call the police. "Finish these." He walked up to me. With a flattering expression, he said, "Emma, you heard everything. It was all her doing. How could I do this to you? Now everything is clear. I have already called the police. From now on, we can live peacefully." That was all he said. He reached out to me like before. He stretched out his hand to grab mine. As soon as his hand reached out, I pushed him away forcefully. "That's enough. Nathan, the past cannot be changed. The harm you caused me cannot be undone. Now I have gotten back the photos. There's nothing here that I'm reluctant to part with. I formally file for divorce. From now on, we will live our own lives. I don't want to see you again." That was all he said. I turned and left. Nathan cried and couldn't speak. He chased after me and grabbed my arm. He wasn't as strong as I was. I shook his hand off with all my strength. I left the home we had lived in together for many years without looking back. I dragged along the luggage I had packed long ago. I took a taxi to an old neighborhood. I walked towards the apartment I hadn't visited in a long time, relying on my memory. This is another apartment left to me by my parents. It only has 1 bedroom and a living room. Although it's shabby, it will be enough for now. After settling in, I immediately contacted a lawyer. I asked her to help me handle the divorce proceedings and property division. Given Nathan's attitude, it's clear that a peaceful divorce is no longer possible. I can only resolve it through legal means. This company was established with the inheritance left by my parents when I got married. Now that I'm getting a divorce, I must get it back no matter what. I absolutely cannot let it fall into Nathan's hands. The day after I submitted the divorce papers, Nathan indeed called me. As soon as the call connected, he cried and begged me not to divorce him. I didn't want to say much to him. He hung up the phone directly. He even blocked all his contact information. Fortunately, the lawyer acted quickly. In less than a week, all the paperwork was completed. I have officially divorced Nathan. I also successfully got back the company that originally belonged to me. However, as soon as I got the company, I immediately sold it. After all, 3 years have passed. The situation is completely different now. My former employees, under Sophia's instigation. All were fired by Nathan. After my investigation, I found out half of the people in the company were actually spies arranged by Sophia. After dealing with these matters, I officially registered a new company. I still plan to start a perfume company. Because this is my area of expertise, I quickly gathered all the staff and devoted myself fully to my career. Previously, I learned that, since I was imprisoned 3 years ago, the company's performance has been poor. To save costs, Nathan actually replaced the originally high-priced materials with cheap ones. The customers aren't foolish. Once they try it, they'll notice something's off with the taste. Of course, they won't come back. That's why the company can't retain its employees. Now, I made improvements to the original formula. Suddenly, I launched 3 different scents of perfume. To my surprise, they became particularly popular right after their release. These perfumes were quickly sold out. In just 3 months, the company was running smoothly. Business was developing better and better. I also felt a great sense of achievement. On that day, I was busy working in the office as usual. The assistant suddenly brought in a person. He said he was looking for me. I looked up and was instantly stunned. A tall and handsome man was standing in front of me. He looked at me and smiled slightly. "Emma, I've finally found you. Do you remember me?" Hearing him say that, I was a bit taken aback. Logically speaking, a guy this handsome, if I had seen him, I shouldn't completely forget. "My name is Ethan. Now you should remember." I widened my eyes in surprise. So it was him. I was quite good-looking when I was young. I often received love letters from boys in school, but what I remember most vividly is my high school classmate Ethan. He was completely different back then. He was chubby and had a face full of acne. He was often teased and bullied by classmates. Whenever he got into trouble, I would always stand up to help him. Sometimes I would even tutor him. Then one day, someone found a love letter to me under his desk and read it aloud in front of everyone. At that moment, the whole class was laughing at him. They made him the laughingstock when I walked into the classroom. They were telling me this story as a joke. I didn't laugh along. Instead, I carefully tucked the love letter into my pocket. He even stood up to stop those who were mocking him. Later, I seriously told him, "I just want to focus on my studies now. I don't want a date," and I thanked him for his kindness. He didn't say a word at that time. He just kept apologizing to me. I didn't expect that. Suddenly, one day, he transferred schools. He didn't even say goodbye. The one standing in front of me now is completely different from before. That's why I didn't recognize him at first. At this moment, I was also very happy inside, as it was almost time to get off work. I directly invited him to have dinner together. During dinner, we talked a lot. It turned out he had just returned from abroad. I heard from my friend that he came to buy perfume. As a result, he mistakenly found me. I poured him a glass of water and handed it to him. Smiling, I said to him, "This is really fate, since you and your friend like it. I'll pack 2 bottles of every product from the company and send them to you both." He didn't say a word. He just quietly looked at me. I felt a bit awkward under his gaze. I was about to turn away to avoid it, but I heard him chuckle softly. "Emma, I don't want those perfumes, I only want you. Is that okay?" I doubted I heard him right. I turned to look at him. I found that there was no hint of joking on his face. His expression was very serious. "Emma, from the first time I saw you in high school, I fell for you. I've liked you for a full 10 years. In these 10 years, I haven't dated anyone, because I've always had you in my heart. Back then, I didn't look very good. I felt particularly insecure. I thought I wasn't worthy of you, so I never had the courage to confess to you. Later on, I worked hard to change for you. Now I've become even better than before. I want to seriously tell you, I like you. I hope to become your boyfriend. Can you give me this opportunity?" After hearing what he said, I was momentarily stunned for some reason. My heart suddenly raced. I hurriedly lowered my head. I never expected that such a good man would silently wait for me all along. Only now do I realize. I took a deep breath to calm myself down. After a few minutes, I slowly began to speak. I told him everything I had experienced. I confessed that I had been married and that I had been to prison. I thought that after saying this, he would change his attitude, but I didn't expect he already knew. "Emma, I understand everything about your past. Those are just your previous experiences. It's not your fault. I just feel sad. If I could have been by your side back then, I definitely wouldn't let you go through so much unpleasantness and hurt." Hearing him say this, my eyes suddenly became wet. Ethan, he is truly an exceptional man. However, I didn't agree to him right away. I just said we should spend some time together first. After all, we hadn't been in touch for so many years. But he was still very happy. He even applied for the position of perfumer at my company. That's what he studied in college. Later, he went abroad for further studies and continued to research this field. What a coincidence. After joining the company, he started actively pursuing me, bringing me flowers every day. He even cooked at home and brought the food to me at work. The employees were all cheering nearby, encouraging me to agree to him quickly, pressuring us to get together soon. I was really having a hard time handling it. I told him privately that he didn't need to go through so much trouble. He just smiled and replied, "Emma, I love you. Everything I do for you is worth it." Seeing him shy like that, I couldn't help but get closer. I gently kissed his lips. After the kiss, he held me in his arms. I asked a bit shyly, "You've already kissed me, so what are we to each other now?" I'm asking. "What do you think, Emma? From now on, you are my boyfriend if possible. I hope you can be my partner for life. I will do my best to give you the best of everything." That night, he took me to his home. We had a very pleasant evening. When I woke up in the morning, Ethan and I gently kissed each other. Then he got up to make breakfast for me. I knew I was very lucky to meet such a wonderful person. Looking at her smile, I silently made up my mind. I must cherish her from now on. After breakfast, we went to the company together. Just as we arrived downstairs, I unexpectedly saw a familiar face. It was Nathan. It's only been a few months since we last met. He looks much older. His eyes are sunken. His complexion is poor. Half of his hair has turned white. He has lost so much weight. He saw me. His eyes lit up. He immediately ran over excitedly. "Emma, I've finally found you." He opened his mouth. It seemed like he wanted to say something, but his gaze suddenly fixed on the hands Ethan and I were holding tightly. In an instant, his eyes widened. Then he angrily yelled at Ethan, "Who are you? Why are you holding my wife's hand?" He said this. He even reached out to separate our clasped hands. I frowned and immediately pulled Ethan behind me. I coldly said to Nathan, "We officially divorced a few months ago. Please mind your language. This is my new boyfriend. Please don't come looking for me again in the future. To avoid misunderstandings, you can go now." Nathan seems hurt by my cold attitude. He grasped my sleeve. His eyes were filled with pleading. "Emma, I understand you're angry with me. That's why you deliberately brought a man to play this act. We've been together for so many years. How could you just easily let go of this relationship?" I shook off his hand. I scoffed. "Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? What does all these years of feelings amount to? You still casually slept with another woman." Nathan's face suddenly turned pale. "I know you're still upset with me over Sophia. I was really out of my mind back then. I was completely bewitched by her. Later, I called the police. The police clarified what happened 3 years ago. Sophia was also sent to prison. No one will ruin our relationship anymore. Please, give me another chance. Will you forgive me?" He kept pleading, like a believer longing for divine help. But now, I have no feelings for him anymore. I stared at him, slowly and clearly told him, "Nathan, leave. My feelings for you have vanished. Now I've met someone I truly love. There's no longer a place for you in my heart. Don't disturb my life anymore." After saying that, I took Ethan's hand and left without looking back. Suddenly, Nathan shouted angrily and resentfully from behind, "I don't believe it. Emma, I don't believe you would do this to me. It's all because of her. Right, it must be her who approached you first. That's why you would treat me this way. It's all your fault." My heart tightened. I hurriedly turned back. I saw Nathan suddenly pull out a sharp knife from somewhere and stabbed straight at Ethan. I drew in a sharp breath. I rushed over to pull Ethan away. I kicked Nathan's arm. The knife flew out. He also fell heavily to the ground. Ethan turned pale with fear. His whole body trembled. I hugged him, feeling heartbroken. I whispered words of comfort. Then I immediately called the police. Soon, the police arrived. They took Nathan away. I held Ethan tight. I let out a long sigh of relief. This turmoil was finally over. Later, the verdict for Nathan came out. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional injury. Meanwhile, I also officially accepted Ethan's proposal. We decided to hold the wedding next month. Ethan prepared a grand and romantic wedding for me. At the wedding, he vowed to me he would make me the happiest woman in the world. 6 months later, I heard about Nathan and Sophia again. I heard that Nathan went to prison. He has been in a daze all day. He's been mumbling my name all the time. Later, he lost control of his emotions. He started to hurt himself. He was diagnosed with severe mental issues. The prison guards had no choice. They could only send him to a mental hospital. It's estimated that he will find it very hard to get out for the rest of his life. Sophia is in prison. One day, she got into an argument with someone in her cell. During the fight, she accidentally hit a sharp corner of the table. She died on the spot. When I heard this news, I felt nothing at all. You reap what you sow. This is what they brought upon themselves. Can't blame anyone else. At this moment, my husband is with me looking at diamond necklaces. I just looked at one of them a bit longer. He then told the salesperson, "My wife has her eye on this one. These 10 necklaces, I want them all." I looked at him. We exchanged a smile. I understand. My beautiful life is about to begin.